The U.S.-led war on drugs in Afghanistan has been ongoing since the fall of the Taliban in 2001. And despite millions of dollars being spent on destroying crops, Afghanistan remains the world leader in opium poppy production. But as RT's Laura Emmett discovered, the crackdown is having an adverse effect, with countries like the U.S. now forced to grow their own poppies to plug a shortage in pharmaceuticals.
In the rolling fields of Oxfordshire at this time of year, you'll probably see wheat or barley ripening for the harvest. But dry springs and warm summers have enabled these farmers to plant a very different type of crop, opium poppies. They're under contract to a pharmaceutical company that turns the opium into morphine and codeine to plug a shortfall in strong painkillers in the National Health Service. In fact, there's a global shortage of drugs made from poppies. The opium here will be put to good use, but thousands of miles away, NATO troops are wiping out existing Afghan poppies with bombing, burning and spraying.
The main question is, why are we destroying a crop and then having to grow poppies in fields in Oxfordshire? It's been used by the American and British governments repeatedly. One of the so-called soft arguments that they put, one of the liberal arguments that they put, is that they're fighting a war on drugs. This is complete hypocrisy. It's not true. It's not what the war is about, and we should own up to that.
It's easy to understand why Afghan farmers grow, then sell opium to the Taliban. There's an effective distribution network, and they can make around 17 times more profit per hectare than they could on wheat. Despite the obvious economics, farmers are still being encouraged to grow other crops. British MP Frank Field thinks that policy has failed, but the Americans won't budge.
America wills, and we follow in behind them. So it makes a nonsense of what this relationship should be about, when you're putting British lives at stake, not to be able to use that as a bargaining position with the Americans to rethink a strategy which I think most people think over the years has failed. If we look historically, has failed. How do we try a new tack?
Frank Field and his group, Poppy Relief, think Afghan opium should be legalised instead. It would benefit Afghan farmers, raise much needed revenue for the government's nation rebuild, and stop the opium falling into the hands of the drug cartels. Field says it should be military strategy too.
In Afghanistan, we have chosen bombs rather than brains. And anybody who would be thinking about how do we get ordinary people, ordinary farmers who see poppies as a cash crop, how do we get them to protect the backs of our troops? We will be thinking about how do we harness this crop, how do we pay them for it, and how do we then use that crop to transfer it into medicines to counter pain.
Burned in Afghanistan and kept a secret here in Britain, no one wants to talk about the UK's opium growing programme. We asked both the farmers and the company they grow for, Macfarlane Smith, if they would give us an interview. Macfarlane Smith said they wouldn't allow the farmers to talk to us because it's part of their contract with the Home Office that they keep the poppy growing hush-hush. The Home Office also declined to comment. While poppies are increasingly harvested in Britain, the so-called war on drugs is being decisively lost. The UN says opium production in Afghanistan has been on the rise since the US occupation began in 2001. Laura Emmett, RT, Oxfordshire.